So this is lesson 2 on calculating the perimeter and area of 2D shapes. Let's start with perimeter. The word perimeter means the distance around the outside of a shape. So let's look at this example here. I've laid this out here. We have a rectangle with 1 centimeter squares. So you can just simply count, or you can do a calculation to add up all the lengths around the outside. So I'm going to show it like this. I have 1 plus 1 plus 1. That means this side is 3 centimeters. And then I have 1 plus 1 again, so that's 2 centimeters. And then here, another 3 centimeters. And then here, another 2 centimeters. So if I want to add up the perimeter, I'm going to add up all of those outside lengths. 3 centimeters times 2, because there's 2 of them, plus 2 centimeters times 2. So 3 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2, that makes 10 centimeters. So that is my perimeter for that shape. Okay, so you can practice. I would pause here and try and find the perimeters of the shapes below, or you can do it along with me. So here again, this one, we have a rectangle. So that means the opposite sides are the same. I'm just going to highlight them so we can see that. So when I'm calculating this perimeter, I'm going to go 18 yards times 2 plus 7 yards times 2. 18 comes from that yellow side, 7 comes from the blue side. So 18 times 2 is 36, and 36 plus 14 is 50. So the perimeter, the distance around the outside of that shape would be 50 yards. Next one is a triangle. This little symbol here indicates that these sides are the same length. So I'm just going to highlight them in the same color. So both of those sides are 11. So there's 2 of them. So you can do 11 plus 11, or you can do 11 times 2. And then you want to add up the 13, which is along the bottom. So we have 3 side lengths, 11 plus 11 plus 13, and if you add those up, you get 35. Okay. This one here, again, these little symbols, when you have 2 dashes, those mean those are the same, and these are the same. So I'm going to use some different colors here. I've got 3 centimeters here and here, and I've got 5 centimeters here and here, and then I have 2.5 on the bottom. So I'm going to go 3 centimeters times 2, 3 plus 3, and I'm going to go 5 centimeters times 2, and then add up the 2.5. Just going to keep my colors consistent here. So 3 times 2 is 6, and then I have 5 plus 5, that's 16, and then plus 2.5 is 18.5. All right, so perimeter means distance around the outside. So you would have to calculate perimeter if you wanted to figure out how much fencing you would need to cover a yard, for example. Okay, area is something different. Let's move on to that. That's talking about how much distance the inside of a shape is covering. So one way you could say that is the amount of space enclosed by. How much space does it take up, essentially, by a 2D shape? We're looking at flat shapes here when we're talking about area. Okay, so what we want to do here in this example here, we can just count it. So this little square here, because it's 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter, we call this space 1 centimeter squared with a little 2. That's because it's 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. And you'll see that there's 6 of them. So if you have your shape broken up like that, and you can just count the squares, you can simply do that to get the area. But a faster way to do that for a rectangle is to multiply the length times the width. That'll always tell you how many squares there are. So if I look at the length, it's 3 centimeters, and the width is 2 centimeters. So the area here, and we can say A for short, is going to be 3 centimeters times 2 centimeters, which is 6 centimeters squared. And so we always use a little 2 here for area. That's because we're talking about the squared space that the shape is taking up. It's a different type of unit than a length is. Another way to see that is because we've multiplied 2 different centimeters together, and when we do that, we have 2 centimeters. So that's it. Okay, so there's 3 formulas here we can use for really common shapes that we see every day. So rectangle, we just talked about that. You just do length times width. For triangle, triangles are just half the size of a rectangle. See, I can draw in a kind of a rectangle there, and you'll see the triangle is just half of it. So all we do is we take the length and the width and we multiply them and then just divide by 2. So it's almost the same formula as the rectangle formula. You just cut it in half at the end. Okay. And then area of a circle, that's different. We use pi for that. So it's pi times radius squared. And the radius is the length from the center of the circle to any of the edges on the outside. Okay, so let's practice. And for the ones with pi, we're going to have to round our answer. So we'll need a calculator for that. Okay, so first one here, we see this is a triangle. So we're going to use our base times height divided by 2. You always want to use, be careful to use not the diagonal distance on one of the sides, but you always want to use the 2 lengths that are perpendicular or have a 90-degree angle for your calculation. So here we want to do 10 centimeters times 13 centimeters divided by 2. So that's 130 divided by 2, which is 65. And we want to make sure we have the units correct. It's 65 centimeters squared. This is a rectangle. So 3 feet, length times width, 8 feet, 24 feet squared. Okay. And then the circle here, we have pi r squared. So in this case, the radius is 33. So when I type that into my calculator, I get pi, oops, I have to turn my calculator on, that would help, pi times 33 squared. And we get 3421.1944. We want to round that, it says, to the nearest tenth. So 3421.2, because the 1 is next to a 9, so we need to round it up. And I'm going to use a little squiggly saying that I've rounded it. It's not an exact answer. And notice my units are meters squared. Okay, these next 2 are interesting. They're called composite shapes. That means they're made of more than one shape. So there's a couple of ways you can break these up here. For this first one, I'm going to just split it into 2. There's a couple ways you could do it. You could subtract away that area as well. So it looks like this one is a square. It's 16 by 16. And then this little guy, if that's 8, then this also has to be 8. So it's also a square. So squares are rectangles. So we can do 16 times 16 plus 8 times 8. So that gives us 320 millimeters squared. Okay. So we did 1, 2. Okay. This one is a half circle and then a triangle. Let's do the triangle first because it's easier. So the triangle's base is 6 and the height is 4. So for the triangle, I'm going to do 6 times 4, which gives 12. And for the half circle, I just want to do the area formula for the circle and then just divide it in half. So for the half circle, the radius is only from the center to the outside. So the radius is 3. So it's going to be 3 times 3, pi times 3 squared, and then divide it by 2. Okay, so if you type that into a calculator, you get about 14.137. And we want to round this to the nearest hundredth, it says in the question. So I want to look at that 7 and say, oh, I got to bump it up to a 4. So if I add those numbers together, I get 26.14 meters squared. So if you have a composite shape, the way to deal with it is to break it up into 2 separate shapes and then just add those areas together. All right, that's the end of the lesson.